show starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go. Bass in your face. Bass in your face.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Uncommon Sense with host Haney Grown. Now, for the benefit of those of you who are not familiar with the channel or are watching this channel for the first time, the reason why it is called Uncommon Sense because here on this platform, we discuss everyday issues where we try to find logical solutions, but not everyone uses logic. I also have another YouTube channel called Latina Diaspora where I discuss issues pertaining to Latinos in the United States. The link to that channel is in the description. I want to let everybody know that I'm currently live on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Also, the subscriber mode has been enabled for the first 5 minutes. So, what I'm gonna first of all, I want to give a huge shout out to all those who've already subscribed to the channel. Whether you've been a supporter from the very beginning or just recently joined, I really appreciate your love and continued support. I also want to give a huge shout out to all those who follow me on social media, as well as those who allow me to enter into your devices, and those who watch from the clouds, even the haters. So what I'm going to ask you to do, I'm going to ask you to please subscribe, like, and set the bell notifications to all. So therefore, whenever I do produce content, you will have the opportunity to catch it live or catch it on the playback. Now, being that it is Friday night, today we're having another episode of Open Discussion where I will share my views regarding several topics. You, the audience, will have an opportunity to opine, also suggest topics that you want me to discuss. If it's something that I do not have a great deal of knowledge about, I will state so. There are some topics that I would prefer to avoid due to the fact that they're too controversial for me to discuss. Now, first of all, I hope you're enjoying this 3-day weekend. You know, being that Monday is a holiday, it's President's Day, and many of us are blessed to have the day off. Let me just start off by saying what's going to be the schedule for next week. I will be live on Sunday night, Wednesday night, and Friday night on this channel. As far as when I'm going to be live on my other channel, most likely be Monday. I will discuss more details on Sunday night's live. So, excuse me, just want to get my train of thought. I also want to let people know that the link to join the panel has been pinned. Should anyone wishes to hit that link and opine regarding anything that we will discuss, you're more than welcome to do so. Let me make this perfectly clear. If I have not seen you before, if I've not heard from you before, I will insist that you come up in the backstage and make sure that no one tries to flash anything, any adult content, which will cause the people of YouTube to take down their strength. Once I determine that you're going to do that, then I'll let you get on the panel. Excuse me. So, one of the topics that I actually, there's a couple of topics which I will discuss next week. Some of you have heard me talk about Tier 6 and some of the issues that's involved. Well, what I'm going to be doing on Sunday night, I'm going to explain, I'm going to share why Tier 6 is a problem for many municipal employees. Wednesday, I'm going to be talking about how to avoid office politics. And it can get very toxic, it can get very messy, and certain things like office politics is best to avoid altogether. Excuse me. Now, the first thing I'm going to you know, talk about is, of course, um, there have been a lot of memes on TikTok regarding Bad Bunny's performance during the Super Bowl. Um, Personally, I think I enjoyed his performance. It was rich in culture, and it was a performance which embraced multiple peoples. Now I understand everyone's happy because one of the issues is because he does not speak English. But I will submit to you, even if you did not understand Spanish, you should be able to understand that it was a performance embracing what's beautiful regarding Latino culture. And speaking about culture, now let's not forget that we are in the middle of Black History Month, where we honor the achievements uh, of the African American community. And I've said this before, and I will continue saying, one of the biggest attributes that I attribute with the with Black people is their ability to overcome tragedy and difficulty. And this is in light of the fact that their ancestors did not, many of them did not come voluntarily. They were kidnapped and brought to this country against their will. They were forced to provide free labor. They were deprived of their culture. They were deprived of their language. They were deprived of their what makes them unique. And they undergone 250 years of slavery, plus over 100 years of segregation, simply because of the skin color. So obviously, there's going to be some consequences regarding these actions. Now, I'm not trying to condone bad behavior, but I think what we have to do understand that we're all accountable for our actions. And speaking about accountability, one thing I have noticed among some of the people that I do know, that some people have an issue accepting individual accountability. And you're probably wondering, how can I make this assessment? Very easily. And let me make this perfectly clear. This critique is not directed towards any individual. I'm just simply stating an observation based on what I'm able to observe and interact. Not everyone can take accountability for their actions. There are those that when you try to to accept accountability, they'll blame other people and the other blames their circumstances. One thing we all have to bear in mind that as a sign of maturity is to be able to take accountability for one's actions. I'm going to speak for myself. Um, while I may not like always to admit I'm wrong, I have to admit there are occasions when I have to admit I'm wrong, and there are times when I have to admit that I made poor decisions, that I exercise poor judgment. Okay, that's simply a sign of maturity. Um, because one of the things that my parents taught me is never be afraid to take accountability for your actions and try to learn from your mistakes. And it's something I have in my 63 years of life, I made some mistakes, some of them small and some of them huge. But what I have tried to do is learn from them so I don't repeat those same mistakes. Now, for the benefit of those who are just tuning in, we're having another episode of Open Discussion. And in Open Discussion, I will share my views regarding several topics. And of course, you, the audience, will have an opportunity to opine. Now, this week has been an interesting week. First of all, they they have moved me from one cubicle to another cubicle, and the reason why is that um, the city of New York has been consolidating their spaces. So what they're doing is wherever there's empty spaces, they're bringing people from other locations to our location. So as a result, they move me from one side of the floor to the other side of the floor. And of course, there's been a time adjustment. Um, and of course, with every move, there's always going to be some minor inconveniences. Okay. But one of the things I've learned to be patient, and things take time. I mean, things like um, getting used to your spot, getting used to a new telephone number, and things of that nature. Generally, look, my main concern is as long as I have a cubicle, as long as I have a computer and a telephone, and I can remotely on the days that I work remotely, that is working from home, I'm fine. Okay. Um, Now, there are certain individuals that do not like change at all. They, um, they have an issue of adapting. I have been fortunate that I have learned to adapt. Um, as I get older, I realize that I've slowed down a little bit. I realized that I have to like make notes that I don't forget things. I also realized that I'm getting older. Okay. I'm not the same person I was 20 years ago. And I don't fear change because I understand myself and I understand what I'm able to do and what I'm not able to do. Now, one thing I have to admit, I've been watching a lot of Gigi's content, that's Golden Goddess. Um, and again, I would submit to you, if you have not subscribed to her channel, do so. She does talk about a lot of issues as pertaining to mixed people and also other talk as far as celebrity topics are concerned. One thing I have noticed um, in nearly 4 years of interacting with people who are mixed is that, of course, they have their own situations, they have their own experiences. I don't claim to know them or understand them fully. But what I have tried to do is I try to understand, I try to learn. And of course, just like in every sector, um, you have good people and you have people who are not so good. Okay. And of course, I'm not gonna mention names, but you do have individuals that have certain agendas, and you have certain individuals where they're not able to argue without getting emotional. And one of the things I would submit to you is that when you start to argue with emotion, you already lost the argument right there. And to be perfectly honest, there's certain individuals that I just refuse to engage with because of the nature that they interact, because of the lack of maturity that they hold, that they're not able to take accountability, and which means they're not able to learn. Okay. And it is very easy to pass the buck to other people. It's very easy to blame others because when you blame others, you don't focus on yourself. You don't focus on what you need to do to improve. You do not focus on your behavior because you're too busy blaming other people. Let me just check. My apologies. This does it every so often. I do need to check to see if there's anyone watching on Instagram. So that's the situation because unfortunately I have a bad habit. I'm not always looking at an Instagram and see who's watching. So I just want to make sure that I acknowledge those who are watching on Instagram. Now, lately the weather has gotten a little bit warmer, so hopefully all that snow that from that snow from that snowstorm that we had on January the 26th will start to melt. Okay, because I don't know about you, um, to try to navigate around mountains of snow, That's a challenge, especially in some places when they did not do such a great job cleaning the snow. Okay, because there is, you can slip and fall, and you can hurt yourself. Okay. One of the reasons why I'm going to be talking about tier six, because there's many issues that's involved. And for those of you who do not understand what I'm talking about, when you are a municipal employee, what you are opt to do is you are opt to join the pension plan, where after you retire, you'll get your pension and you'll get your social security. Now, one of the inequities regarding Tier 6 is that your contributions vary depending on your annual income. That's the first issue. The second issue is not all your cash overtime gets factored into your pension. Now, what some municipal employees would do, and this is particularly getting closer to time to retire, they'll try to do overtime because the way they develop, determine your pension is that it is based on your last 3 years that you worked, and depending how long you've been in a pension plan, will determine what is your pension will be. And of course, for many employees like myself, we are able to factor in all the time. So we have an event coming up Wednesday, March 4th, which is called Lobby Day, where we will go up to Albany for the day, and we will speak with our representatives in the Assembly and in the Senate, State Senate, regarding several top issues. One of them is fixing Tier 6. Now, what is it that we're looking for? Well, for one thing, is to have a flat contribution rate. Okay? Because if you have a flat contribution rate, that means that you'll be able to take home some money, and it'll be more equitable. And of course, another thing, try to fight for is have all your overtime, or a large portion of your overtime factored into your pension. And one of the problems is when you have a pension tier, which is crappy. That makes it harder for us to recruit young people to work for the city. And another issue that we have with dealing with these young people is that trying to encourage you to understand that they should be concerned about their future and their retirement. The problem is that for many of them, retirement is something that's going to happen way down the road, and they need to focus on the now. What they don't understand is you need to focus on the now, because the now is going to affect your tomorrow. So all we can do is just try to encourage them to take things more serious um, regarding the pension. And of course the common comment is that we're not going to be here that long. Um, I've known municipal employees who've been who've been employed for 30, 35, 40 years, and I would say almost all of them thought, "Oh, I'm not going to be here long. I'm going to stay here until I can get a better job." Well, what happened is that 2 years turned out to be 20, 30, or 40. So Easier said than done. Let's check and see. I'm probably not going to stay long because it looks like it's not too much, nothing going on. So I'll probably stay on for maybe another 15 to 20 minutes. Now, one thing that I've been speaking about, and I believe it's true, is that in order for you to be considerably, truly well, you need to be healthy in your mind, you need help in your body, you need help in your emotion, and in your spirit. Okay? Because if you're not healthy in one, it's going to affect the other three. As I like to call it, health is that four-legged stool. And the first leg is your physical health. The second leg is your mental health. The third leg is your emotional health. And the fourth leg is your spiritual health. Okay. Now, when it comes to spiritual health, um, I understand that not everyone believes in God, but people believe in a higher power. And of course, there are people that don't believe in God at all. But even atheism, that's a belief system. Um, Atheists may not look at it that way, but that's reality. No, you do need to know the first part is being physically well, which means making sure that you maintain a healthy lifestyle, make sure that you get your appropriate sleep, eat a well balanced meal. Uh, Also, make sure that you engage in some sort of physical exercise and things of that nature, and be on top of your medical appointments. So that's physical health. Mental health, basically making sure that you're okay with your mind, making sure that you are at peace with your mind. Okay. And there are ways that you can maintain proper mental health. And I have discussed this on this channel multiple occasions, and I will at some point devote some time for mental health, how to develop good mental health. Emotional health, I mean, basically making sure that you're okay with your own emotions. Okay. And of course, when it comes to spiritual health, making sure that you are okay um, within your spirit, whether it be whether it be with God or whether it be who is your higher power. Okay, for me, it's God Almighty. For other people, it might be other things. So, in order to be well, completely well, you need to be well physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. If you're well in all four, you're truly well. If you're not well in one, it's going to affect the other three. Okay. Let's see what else. Let's check. Okay. All right. Now, the final thing that I will talk about is basically what I like to call the rules of the world, but my rules and how I conduct things here on this platform. Okay. Generally, I don't censor people. Okay. I believe people have a right to express themselves as they see fit. I generally let people regulate themselves how they're going to interact. However, there may be times when I will ask people to tone it down, calm down. I will ask people to show respect towards each other. Um, if people have an if people have an issue with that, they're free to leave. One of the things that I was taught by my mother, God rest her soul, that if you don't have something pleasant to say about a person, don't say anything at all. Okay. And of course, if you have whatever beefs that you have, do not bring it here. Okay. My job is not to referee. My job is not to take sides. Okay. And generally, if one person is making some sort of assessment or an accusation, I like to have the person who's the subject to come on the panel to to get the full picture. And whether or not they decide to do so, that's their issue. Because I don't want to get in other people's beefs. You can engage that kind of energy and activity on your platform. When it comes to my platform, do not bring it here. Do not bring it here. And of course, if I have to, I will remove people from the panel, or I have to block people. I would do so. Okay. And people want to get upset with me, it's fine. And also, people need to understand that I do things my way. This is my platform. This is my cyber home. I dictate what is appropriate behavior and what is not appropriate behavior. And if you cannot deal with my rules, you're more than welcome to leave. Okay. And I would not harbor any ill will, but so be it. And one more thing that I will share before I wrap this up. Yes, I am seriously thinking about retiring. Okay. But one thing I will do when I do retire, it's gonna be on my terms. Okay. I will retire when it gets to the point when it's my time to leave. And one of the things that I've been blessed to learn when is a good time to leave. And it will become a time when I will retire, that I will leave the work world, so to speak, and enjoy the fruits of my labor and retire. And I plan to lead a very active retirement. I will still be active with my local as far as attending com, um, committee meetings, also being involved in these activities and things of that nature. So that's one area where I'm going to keep myself occupied. Of course, DC 37 has a retirement association where I'm going to be active. So that will keep me busy. Also, there are two senior citizen centers in my immediate area where I'll be able to engage in activities with other seniors. And maybe I might volunteer my services with my local. And of course, travel. One of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I make at least 2 trips a year. And of course, it will alternate between um, domestic travel and foreign travel. And speaking about travel, now it's a requirement that if you're going to fly domestically, that you have to have a what's called a real ID, which is basically uh, your standard identification with this star designation stating that that you have a real ID. And the reason why is identity. And of course, if you do not have a real ID, you will have to pay a fine, and you may or may not be able to board your flight unless you have a passport, which is valid. And speaking about traveling abroad, what I would recommend is the following. Number one, learn as much about the culture of the country you're visiting as much as possible. There are numerous videos on YouTube, and if you know people from these countries, ask them what's considered acceptable and what's considered not acceptable. Number one. Number two, if you can learn some of the words from the language over there, that's gonna make your stay more comfortable and more relaxing. You don't have to be 100% fluent in the languages that they're gonna visit, but it will help that you know some words. And number three, bear in mind that the culture and the standards and the norms may be different to the standards and the norms here in the United States. One of the problems that people have when they travel abroad is they expect things to function in their country as if things function in the United States. One thing we have to bear in mind, we're visiting their home. And for Pete's sake, do not get in pick fight with the local residents. That's never going to end well because then you have to deal not only with the authorities over there, but also with the community. So uh, try your best to learn about the culture, and I'm sure they'll appreciate it. I have been blessed. I have been to Mexico. I've been to Panama. I've been to Colombia. I've been to the Dominican Republic, Canada, and of course Puerto Rico. And in most cases, I have done research regarding what's considered okay and what's considered not okay. And try to bear in mind that uh, what's considered acceptable here in the United States may not be considered acceptable over there. So these are things to consider. If you try to apply these things, you're going to have a much enjoyable stay in the country that you're visiting. And of course, you need to be mindful of the countries you visit, and you need to be mindful regarding the political situation. Because, of course, there's some countries uh, shouldn't visit due to the political and other factors that's happening. Okay, so So at this point, I will start to wrap this up. Okay. And of course, I had nothing planned. Um, I admit it. Um, I try to go off the cuff, so to speak. And of course, um, the playback gang, do your own thing. You're more than welcome to leave whatever comments that you wish. Just try to keep it respectable. That's all I ask. Okay. And I will be live on Sunday at 10 p.m. And of course, I will close the same way that I always close. We must do everything possible to avoid the presence of the mentally and intellectually challenged, because if we fail to do so, we will be infected by their stupidity and massive insanity. And of course, whatever we say and do, we should do for the glory of God. So, so with that being said, I wish all of you a wonderful good night, a wonderful weekend, and we will see each other again. Hopefully, real soon. So, take care, have a good night, and peace.